Tier list, tier list, 90 cheeky tier lists. Tier list, 90 cheeky tier lists. Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Nightingale, and I'm back again with another cheeky tier list. Now today, as you can see by my jumper, I'm going to be talking about Studio Ghibli films. Now, if you don't know anything about Studio Ghibli, they are effectively the Walt Disney Studio of Japan. They have made some incredible animated films since the 1980s when they were established. And I knew nothing about them until COVID struck. We were all locked down, and I had to watch. We were all stuck in our homes, and I was struggling for things to watch. And my good friend Emma Nixon, along with her partner Russ, suggested that I give Studio Ghibli a go and watch some of their films. And I'm so glad I took them up on that advice, because I've seen some masterful films as a result. Fortunately, the vast majority of these films are on Netflix. If you don't like, watching foreign language films and subtitles, you can watch them with English dubs if you want as well, which is lovely. I prefer to watch these films in the original Japanese form with subtitles, because I believe it's more authentic, but that's just my personal preference. So today I'm going to go through the Studio Ghibli films. Now, I've got several categories. I've got animation classic, I've got Ghibli great, I've got good, okay, poor, and not seen yet, because I haven't seen all these films. Ghibli have a huge amount of films that they release, kind of like the Walt Disney Studios have a huge amount of films that they release as well. But let's get started with My Neighbours the Yamadas. Now, I've heard this is a comedy, but I have not seen it yet, so I can't comment on that. Tales of Earthsea. This is frequently seen by a lot of people as the worst Ghibli film. I would have to say that I agree. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think the animation's great, but the story isn't, and the characters are not all that good in it. I don't think it's their best work, definitely not their best. Ponyo, right, okay, Ponyo is one of the cutest films Ghibli's ever done, but it's absolutely bonkers. Like, it is just totally bonkers. It's about a fish that turns into a little girl and wants to be human, but by doing that subjects the world to tsunamis. And then out of the tsunami, everyone seems to be kind of okay with it. like everyone's just in boats going, all right, how are you doing? All right, yeah, well, I was just underwater. All right, okay, it's fine, yeah. It's a little bit bonkers. I don't think adults are the target audience. I think it's very much more for children, and for that respect, and it's very cute, and there's some lovely sweet moments in it. I'm gonna put it as just okay though. I think it could be great for young children, but for me personally, I found it just a little bit too mental to really recommend it. Right, Secret World of Arrietty surprised me. Really surprised me. I'm not a big fan. I wasn't. This is a remake of The Borrowers, but basically in Japanese. And when I was young, I didn't really like The Borrowers. I wasn't into The Borrowers. There's a film adaptation with John Goodman in it. I wasn't really a fan of that. I didn't really care too much about the story. So I went into it knowing that it was a remake of that, of sorts. I really liked this film. I'm going to put it as a Ghibli great. I really enjoyed Secret World of Arrietty. I thought the animation was brilliant. To be fair, the animation is brilliant in all these films. That's kind of a given, to be honest. But I really liked the way the story was done. The way Arrietty used the world around her. I really liked Arrietty as a central character, actually. I thought she was really well done. She was the best thing in it. She was a really strong female character, which Ghibli's known for. Actually, Ghibli is known for having strong female characters, and she's one of the best. Actually, she's really good in it. The relationship she strikes up with the boy who's poorly is really lovely as well. Really well handled and done. I think for a story that is basically within a house and the stakes aren't massive, it's not like the world's in jeopardy or anything like that, I found myself quite hooked into that world and taken along for the ride and really invested in it. So yeah, I was really surprised by Secret World of Arrietty. I thought it was much better than I thought it was going to be. From Up on Poppy Hill, I think this film is good. It's good because it takes you. You really get a sense. It's set around when the Tokyo Olympics was being held, which I believe was in. Not the 2022, not the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. The other Olympics they had, which I believe was 1964. It's set in Tokyo Olympics in 1964. So I was just looking that up, and they really capture that era well. You really feel like you get transported there. It focuses on a romance, slight romance. Between the two characters who are basically preparing their town, or their it's not town, is it? It's city, or their part of the city, for the Olympics. So they get loads of bunting out, it's lots of celebrations. There's not too much story to it, but you can kind of just relax into it. Actually, the story does knock it down a bit. I mean, I'm going to put it as okay. Yeah, the story knocks it down a bit because there isn't much of a story. I just like the setting in it. I think it transports you straight to that moment in time, and it does that really well. But yeah, there is not much story here, and that knocks it down a little bit. So from Up on Poppy Hill, it's quite sweet. It might be good for, some people might get more invested in it than I did, but yeah, we'll keep it as that. Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, the film that started it all. Now this, if I'm being extra stringent and picky, this is not officially a Ghibli film. This was the film that was made, and on the back of the success of this in 1984, they created Studio Ghibli. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great. I wouldn't say it's an animation classic because there are a few others here that I like more and I think are at a higher level than this. But for a film that was like the first of Miyazaki's work, Hayao Miyazaki's like the main director of Studio Ghibli films. He is like the grandmaster, and he is the Walt Disney of Japan. He's seen as a masterful storyteller, and this was his first feature film. I think it's his first feature film. I think. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong with that, but I think that this is his first feature film. It's brilliant, honestly. No, I prefer more. I'm not big into huge fantasy worlds. I quite like Ghibli films that are more. I like films in general that are slightly more grounded where they are in the real world. You know, when, you know, like for me personally, Lord of the Rings doesn't really do much for me because I can't relate to this world because it's completely separate from Earth in the same way as Harry Potter is a bit separate, even though it's still on Earth. It's not of this world. There's no groundedness to it. I prefer films that are more literally down to earth, and that's why Nausicaa surprised me a fair bit, because it is on this world, but it is far in the future of a like dystopian world in which humans have basically ruined the planet and have to learn to live with new life forms that are living off the scraps that we've left behind through years and years of basically pollution and deforestation. It's basically Hayao Miyazaki doing an environmental message in the 1980s, and he's done it in some of his other films, and he does it really well because he doesn't ram it down your throat. He basically says, look, this is just the world that could be in 100, 200, 300 years time. And I think it's beautifully animated. The music by Joe Hisaishi, I hope I've said that right, Joe, is magnificent. He does a lot of the Studio Ghibli films, and this is one of his best scores. I think as a benchmark for strong central characters, Nausicaa is as good as you can get. Like, she is the template. She is absolutely the template for all the other strong female characters going forward in the Ghibli world. She is absolutely brilliant. Love her. She's the best thing in the film. Like, her arc, her character journey is the best thing in the film. By some distance, and because you're going on the journey with her, you can kind of let your mind go along with the flights of fantasy of going into different worlds and going underground and going to different places that usually I would find a bit like, oh god, and like far-fetched a bit, but with this I just kind of go along with it, and she grounds the film for me. There's war going on, there's politics going on, it's a really brilliant first Ghibli film. You know, for the film that sparked Ghibli off, this is as good as you can do a first film, really. The Wind Rises. Now, to date, this is Miyazaki's most recent film. He was supposed to retire after this film, but I believe he's coming back for another Ghibli film, so this will be quite interesting. But The Wind Rises is an interesting one because it's a biopic, basically. It's a biography piece of, let me get this right, Jiro Horikoshi, who was the designer of the Mitsubishi A5M fighter aircraft, which was used heavily in World War II. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of people were quite confused that Miyazaki would choose to do this biopic in the first place, because a lot of his films are anti-war and anti-violence and anti-conflict. He is not one for war. He's actually a peace-loving man, really, and a lot of his films are about trying to be peaceful against people who are, and anyone who's like involved in conflict is seen as the enemy. So to do a biopic on someone who actually designed planes that were used heavily in World War II was quite a surprising move, many people saw, for Miyazaki. But he loves planes. He absolutely adores planes, and therefore he wanted to do a film about planes, and this was the perfect film to do it. And I think it's a very good film. I think it really tells the story of this man well and his life and his the fact that he had relationships with his wife, who then became quite ill. All that is handled beautifully. The dream sequences where he dreams of flight and he looks to the skies and see this vast array of planes above him is just stunning. It's just stunning. It's great storytelling. I think it's good. I enjoy the other films slightly more. I think it can be a bit long in places, and it, you know, if you're not invested, if you're not invested in this character from quite early on, tough. You're stuck with him for the rest of the film because it's a biopic, and I think some people may not be as engrossed in it because they're basically not into planes enough. Like, they're not going to be as invested. For anyone else that is invested, you're going to have a really good time because it's a really good film. So I'm gonna put it as good. The Tale of Princess Kaguya. I saw this the other day. And the animation style in this is very unique. It's a lot of sketch. It's like old sketch, old Japanese sketches brought to life. And I mean that if you just look purely at the poster, you can see that it is a completely different art style to every other Ghibli film. And that is the thing that stands out about it most. But I think it's just okay. I think it's long, plodding in places. I think the central character of Princess Kaguya is great, but there's not enough going on around her to really recommend this film. Like, I feel the first act, when she's growing up in the rural village before she's brought to being a princess, is the strong part of the film. That's where its strength is in that first opening act. When she suddenly becomes a princess later on and has to adapt to life in the capital and all that, and gets estranged from her childhood sweetheart, it all becomes a bit long-winded and a bit dull, to be completely honest. But it is. I'm just saying, I probably would watch Ponyo and, you know, Up on Poppy Hill ahead of Princess Kaguya. It just for me personally, it was a bit long-winded, a bit plodding. The art style is the thing that will sear in your mind from this film, because it is absolutely stunning to look at. Whether you want to watch that for 2 hours when there's not much story and character development is up to you. Basically, that was just my opinion. Other people may watch this and go, what the hell are you talking about? Character development's amazing and story's brilliant, but for me, it just didn't do it for me. When Marnie was there, I thought this was I would say right at the top of good. I believe When Marnie's There is adapted from a British novel, actually. And it's a really fascinating piece, because you almost think at some point it's going to be a young same-sex relationship story, but then it turns out to be a bit of a ghost story. And that part is a bit unique and a bit different. You didn't really see that coming. But the movie has a really lovely pace to it. It's really tranquil. The setting is great. Marnie, the central character of Marnie, I absolutely love her. I think she's really lovely in the film. I think she's brilliant. The ending where it all comes together and you get the final reveal is surprising, and for some people it may be a bit weird, but for me, I kind of just went with it and accepted it. I thought it was good. There's not much more I can say on When Marnie Was There other than that. Right, Earwig. Is it Earwig and the Witch? Right, Earwig and the Witch. Right, I haven't seen Earwig and the Witch. This was Ghibli's first attempt into going into 3D. Now, from what I've heard from other people, they've not really rated it very highly, and they don't like the idea of Ghibli going into that because they're known for stunning 2D animation. So I can completely get why they would turn against the studio for trying to go 3D, because that's not what they're about. But I've also heard it's not a very good film. That's probably why I've not seen it yet. I haven't taken a chance with it. So there we go. Now we're on to a good film. For me, this might well be my favourite Studio Ghibli film. Laputa Castle in the Sky. This is the film that was the first official Studio Ghibli film, because Nausicaa was a huge success. They developed Studio Ghibli, and this was Studio Ghibli's first film. What a first film to make, I have to just tell you right now. It's my favourite because, for me, this is just an epic adventure romp. This is a transportative experience for me. I watched this film, and even though, as I said before, I'm not into flights of fantasy, believe it or not, a floating castle that is in the middle of an eye of a storm that no one can see, that explorers using old airplanes have been trying to find for years, that kind of hooked my interest. And then you have two central characters, Shita and Patsu, who are lovely together on screen. They're not even, there's a small hint of a romance, but there isn't. It's mainly just they're great working together as like a really strong friendship. Those two are great. The Castle in the Sky is beautiful, like absolutely stunning. And there are loads of moments in this film where Miyazaki allows the audience to take in the environments, because the environments are so vast. You have Patsu's home, where he's on the side of a cliff and he's basically blowing his little trumpet to get all like the pigeons and stuff to come along and feed the pigeons. And then you've got the whole massive train chase sequence through this big valley. And then you have which must have inspired The Iron Giant with Brad Bird years later, is you have the robot coming back to life, having been effectively broken and beat up and tortured by the main villains. You have that and him basically running amok in the villain's lair. That's superb. And then you have the pirates, and they're great. All the pirates in this film are great. You have the climax, which takes place on the massive castle in the sky, and that's brilliant. The villain is genuinely menacing and threatening. And Studio Ghibli doesn't have many villains. They don't usually do villains, but actually they do. When they do a villain in this film, it works brilliantly. And for me, you have all that. You have the animation, the music's amazing, all that action adventure. But then you have little quiet moments of dialogue and interactions between characters, and just moments where characters are just looking out, surveying over the castle in the sky, surveying over the land below them as they're flying on the airships, just taking it in. And it allows us as the audience to take a breath and take it in. And that's, I'm going to go on to a further example of that, an even better example of that in one of the later films that we're probably going to talk about. But in this film, Miyazaki does that to perfection. He does it like 3 or 4 times, where literally on screen nothing's happening. Characters are just looking out over vast landscapes whilst music's playing. Sometimes no music at all. It's just the sound of wind in the background when they're flying. And it's just allows the audience to take it all in, just enjoy what they're seeing and get swept up in it. And you are literally transported along with these two young leads. It is a masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. If I'm going to recommend one Ghibli film you watch, it's got to be Castle in the Sky, for me. personally. Either that or another one that I'm going to talk about later. But for me, Castle in the Sky is my favourite Ghibli film. Oh, here he is. The main the main guy, Totoro, my neighbour Totoro. Now, I am going to be honest. I'm going to put Totoro as good. I may get absolutely hammered for that. I think Totoro is an amazing character. I think the film around him is a little bit dull. I'll be off as Ghibli fans get the knives out on me for that. But basically, I think Totoro, the theme is amazing. Totoro is beautiful. But aside from that, I think the little girls in it are actually quite annoying. The cat bus does nothing for me. When Totoro's on screen, it's brilliant. When he's not on screen, it's dull. But the moments with Totoro are so good that it balances it out to being a good film for me, if that makes any sense. Like, you have the children being really annoying, and all the humans I'm not really bothered about, and then you have Totoro, who's way up here, and then he kind of balances it out, so it's kind of like level as good for me. The best scene in this film is again, directed by Miyazaki. For me, the best scene in this film is another quiet moment where they're waiting for a bus, and it's just the two girls in the pouring rain, and suddenly you have Totoro kind of with an umbrella next to them, and it's all done with no words whatsoever. They're just copying each other's actions. That's absolutely masterful. That's by far the best scene in the film. In fact, you could actually just watch that scene and that would be enough. You don't actually have to watch the rest of the film, because not much happens in it. And I really do mean that. Not much happens in this film. But yeah, Totoro's rightfully an amazing character. There's a reason why he's become the icon of Studio Ghibli. But the film he's actually in, not the best, in my opinion. Grave of the Fireflies, right. I have not seen this film. It's not on Netflix. I really want to see this film, and I've heard an awful lot about it, because I've heard it's very, very sad and very, very upsetting and dark, and it deals with really tough subjects. It basically is about two people in the aftermath of the nuclear bomb attacks in World War II. That is hard-hitting stuff, and that is something that I feel really strongly about. Nuclear weapons, and that I don't think they should be on the planet. That's just my personal opinion. So I'm really interested to see this film, because I believe that message is going to be put across loud and clear. But I've also got to brace myself for the fact that it could be quite sad. So I will get around to watching it if I can find some way of trying to find it, and if it eventually does come out on Netflix, I'll try and watch it. The first Ghibli film I ever saw, thanks to Emma for recommending it to me. It's also my second favourite Ghibli film, and it's just the sweetest film. Kiki's Delivery Service is just absolutely, as a coming of age film, is way up there. It is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. She, for my money, she's the best character of any Ghibli film, is Kiki. I think you instantly like her from the moment she appears on screen. You instantly get hooked into her strife and the fact that she has to live independently and get settled in a new place where she instantly feels an outsider because she's a witch. She has an amazing skill which allows her to fly around on her room, but she has to make use of that in a place where people are not instantly accepting of her, and she has to make her way all while having to find new friends as well, because her only companion is a cat. It's a cat that can talk, which is pretty cool, but that is her only companion. So she needs to find and relate to other people her age who are not necessarily witches either. So even though in this film not much happens, it's not like Totoro, because actually, whilst not much is happening in terms of story, a huge amount is happening in the emotional journeys of these characters, and that is what hooks you in, and that's what gets you really invested. And I honestly, if you start watching this film, you can't really stop. Basically, you are instantly hooked in, and it's all because of her and her journey. That being said, the town that she inhabits, what am I talking about? The town that she lives in is really well done as well, from an animation point of view, but also and it's not easy to do this. And again, you've got to give it up to Hayao Miyazaki, because he's an absolute master at this. He gives geography and place to his films, and there's a consistency there. It's a hard and difficult thing to explain, but I will try my best to explain it. Sometimes the Harry Potter films do this really well. There's a consistency, even though you're watching something on screen of a place that doesn't exist and a place you may never have visited. You know exactly where someone is based on the way the camera has filmed it, the angles, or the layout. So if a character comes in from left, you know they've come from this place, because that is where that's where the consistency is. This street leads to this street. There's a map there, but they stick to the map. So there's no inconsistencies. So there's no oh, hang on, she was there a second ago, how come she's at this house instantly? There's none of that. Actually, this place is the other side of town, and it always stays the other side of town. It doesn't change for the convenience of the filmmakers and the story. They're very consistent with the geography in which they set their film, and it works for both live action and animation. And some people bypass this. Some filmmakers don't care about geography. They basically go, well, this character needs to be at this house, so we'll just make it instantly there. Well, how the hell does that work? There has to be a journey, there has to be some time in between, and that time has an impact. So maintaining a consistent geography in the settings of in which the characters inhabit is hugely important, and an underrated skill as a filmmaker. And Miyazaki's a master at it. He did it with Nazca, he did it with Castle in the Sky, he's done it with Totoro, he's done it with Kiki's Delivery Service. He'll do it more, it's to probably the largest scale on Princess Mononoke that we'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, he's a master of that, and that adds a lot to the film. Music's beautiful, Gigi's adorable. What more can I say about Kiki's Delivery Service? Absolute classic. Absolute classic. Only Yesterday. A very adult Studio Ghibli film, this one. This is about a girl growing up and basically finding love later in life. Returning to her roots and finding love later in life, and then reflecting on how her childhood impacted on her decisions that led her back to the rural life that she once lived. I think it's a sweet film, and I would put it as good. I think it's quite low key, but it's very sweet and lovely. Yeah, I think Only Yesterday, very good. Oh, Porco Rosso. This is a great film. Porco Rosso is a great film. Right, you just imagine going into a script meeting. Oh, what have you got? What have you got to get to today, Hayao? Well, I'll tell you what I've got. Right, It's about a pig that flies a plane. And the joke is, oh yeah, I believe that, when pigs fly. And you can just imagine the deathly silence in the room. Going, right, he's finally lost it, right? You can't make a film in which the whole world is human and this guy is a pilot, but he's also a pig, right? That makes no sense. And yet, amazingly, he pulls it off, and you barely give it a second thought. And he sets it in the middle of the, I think it's in the middle of the Mediterranean. I think it's in the, I think it's around Italy. I get the impression it's a European vibe to it. And he's surrounded by really good, strong human characters as well. There are pirates in this film as well. There are air bandits constantly taking pot shots at him. He's wanting to return to a long-lost love who, through some misfortune, led to him getting a curse, which means he looks like a pig, so that's all explained. The air battles are superb. Like it's like Top Gun in animation form. It's that good. Some of the air battles in this film, you really get swept along with this character. It stays in your mind. Honestly, you would never think that a film about a flying pig would be so good. And it's a credit to Miyazaki that it is as good as it is. I think this is Russ's favourite film. Russ's favourite Ghibli film. He recommended it to me. He said it was great. So, yes, Russ it is. Ocean Waves. I quite like Ocean Waves. It gets a lot of bad rap amongst people, because it was made for TV and it's not as polished as some of the other Ghibli films, and it's really low stakes, and it's basically about teenage romance in the city and all that. But I really like Ocean Waves. I think it's, I think the romance is sweet. It's relatable. It's there's good character development in it, and for such a low budget film as it was, the city environment looked really vibrant. So yeah, Ocean Waves is a good film for me. Right, okay. I'm just going to say now. Not a big fan of Pompoko. It's very, very weird. It's very weird. It's very, very weird. All these raccoons with massive cojones. It's odd. It's an odd film. It's a really odd film. And yeah, I watched it. I couldn't really get into it. Yeah, it's just bizarre. Some people may like this film. Some people may really like this film. And I'm sorry if I'm just crapping on it. But I just think it just was not for me. It's just not my cup of tea. I just think, nah. I could easily skip Pompoko. So, forgive me, everyone. Right. Princess Mononoke. This is a film I admire more than I like. I think it's good. I think it's better than The Wind. I think it is. Oh, what do I prefer? I think I prefer Ocean Waves and Only Yes. I'm going to put it there in good. This for me is like Legend of Zelda vibes. This film is probably the most epic Studio Ghibli film of all time. Literally, it takes place over a vast. There's just a vast landscape of mountains, forests, old settlements. The characters are great in it. The two central characters, the princess herself, who's lived a life growing up with wolves and has lived in the forest, and the young man who is cursed with an evil, who's like cursed with like infected by a venom that will kill him, and he's trying to find a cure for it, and the only way he can do that is to seek out on this epic quest. There's a realism to the animation, which really gets you hooked into this forest environment. It's one of the most environmental of Miyazaki's films. He basically is basically saying, right, the only way the forest and the animals within it are gonna be okay and live in harmony and unity is if humans learn to not exploit the resources but work alongside the animals to benefit both parties. That's basically the end message, and it's done really well. It's not hammered down your throat. It's really, explained in a lovely way. It's a bit more gory than other Studio Ghibli films. It's a bit more brutal. It's more adult in theme, to be completely honest. Now, it's just personal preference that I prefer other films above it. But it is a brilliant piece of work, and it's definitely worth checking out and watching at least once. So that's where I put Princess Mononoke. Right, okay, Howl's Moving Castle is another one. It's kind of a bit like Ponyo, except Ponyo, at least the story made sense in Ponyo. In Howl's Moving Castle, I have to hold my hands up. I didn't have a clue what was going on in Howl's Moving Castle. I had no idea what the plot was in this film. I couldn't work it out. I was watching it going, I don't get what's going on. A lot of stuff is happening. They are throwing a lot of stuff at the wall. They're throwing magicians. They're throwing talking fire pits. They're talking castles, believe it or not, that move. But castles that move on like little spidery legs, we're not Wild Wild West, mechanical spider levels, but kind of little legs and just moving around the landscapes. They throw odd curses that turn young people into old women. They have really grotesque, morbidly obese, trunchbull-like looking women in there who also want to throw out magic curses and have trouble climbing stairs. It's all a bit bonkers. And the reason I'm putting it as okay is because I believe there are a couple of moments of quietness where the music is really lovely. Like early on where Hal just kind of takes the girl and just they start floating above the parade, and it's all very like the taking step. That's all beautifully handled. There's a couple of moments of beauty in there, but there's a lot of random banter that doesn't make a lot of sense as well. And it doesn't really make for a good overall film. So that's why I've got Howl's Moving Castle as just okay. Now this one is the Ghibli film that everyone talks about, the Ghibli film that's the most celebrated, not just critically in terms of winning Oscars and winning awards, but also in terms of general consensus amongst Ghibli fans is that this is the best Ghibli film. I respectfully disagree. I actually think that it is just okay. And I could get absolutely hammered for saying Spirited Away is just okay. But I think there is one scene in this film that is one of the best scenes I've ever seen in cinema, full stop. Unfortunately, the rest of the film comes nowhere near that level for me. Basically, it's Alice in Wonderland, but in a spirit world and set in Japan. That's basically, if you want the idea of what Spirited Away is, it's basically Alice in Wonderland, Japanese style. There are so many characters in here. there's a lot of imagination, there's a lot of set pieces, there's a lot of great settings, including the bathhouse and the spirit world, and the central character goes on a huge amount of growth. The young girl starts off as really shy, but in order to get her and her parents back to the real world, she in turn has to become more confident in herself, and that happens over the course of the film. And the one scene for me, but those set pieces and the bathhouse and all that and all these characters, there's a huge amount of animation there. Animation, what am I talking about? Imagination there. But it don't really do much for me. I'm not really taken along with it. I don't really care too much about these characters, to be completely honest. I don't really care. And I find them a bit. I find the whole bathhouse section a bit plodding and slow and not really very interesting. The scene that I think is glorious is the best example of Miyazaki's classic take a break, take a moment of reflection scene. And that is a scene where the young girl has had all this crazy, an hour and a half of craziness happen to her. Parents have eaten too much and turned into pigs. She's been forced to work in a bathhouse with all these weird spirits for ages, and one of them's gone rampant, and she's finally escaped, and she's got to this open plain of shallow water with a train track just underneath the shallow water, so it looks like the train is literally riding over the surface. And she gets to an abandoned train station, and she's literally just a train station, and she's the only person there. And this little train comes up, and she gets on with all these spirits that are literally just sitting there. And the score by Joe Hisaishi is just incredible in this scene. There's no words said at all for 3.5 minutes, and it is basically her going on this train, sitting down and just looking out the window and looking in reflection, just looking out of the window as the train goes along this. It looks like it's running across the ocean, and there's little islands with little houses on, and it's just she's just looking out. And she's just reflecting on the journey she's had. But in this quiet space, Miyazaki is basically saying to the audience, you can reflect on what she's been through, or you can reflect on your own life, on what you have experienced before seeing this film. Like, you can use this as a moment to reflect on your own journey that you've been on, whatever journey that is in your life. You can use this moment for that. He's basically saying, use this moment for that. He's giving you the opportunity to either go along with the character in thinking that, or just take time out yourself to reflect on your life. All done through this perfectly crafted 3.5 minute sequence. It's amazing. That's the best I can describe it without you actually going and watching this scene. The train scene from Spirited Away is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I wish the rest of the film was that good, but it's not. I'm sorry, it's just not. The rest of the film isn't that good. But I think that scene is so amazing that that's why it won the Oscar. That's just my opinion. The Cat Returns. Oh, this is such a sweet film. Oh, I really like cats. I think cats are really cute. So naturally, a film that is basically filled with cats and a really sweet female character as well, who then turns into a cat because she's in a cat world and she has to get back into the real world. It's a little bit bonkers, a little bit crazy, but when you whack the screen full of loads of cats, what's there not to like? So I thought it's a great film. And is it a great film? It's probably not as good as Nausicaa, but I think it's a Ghibli great. I'm just going to say that. I think it's a Ghibli great. The Cat Returns is a spin-off of the last film I'm going to talk about, which is Whisper of the Heart. Now, Whisper of the Heart is also a great. I would put it very close to being an animated classic. I think it is probably my third favourite Ghibli film, actually, is Whisper of the Heart, and it's because it's very grounded. If you actually had a look at that poster, it looks very fantastical. Is a cat in a top hat, and they're floating around the cityscapes, and it's all a bit wild. Actually, that is just one scene in the film, and that is a fantasy sequence of which the girl who is in that poster, she is writing her first story. She wants to be a writer. She's getting writer's block. She doesn't know what the story's going to be in a story that she's desperate to write to help her get through the troubles and difficulties of high school, and the fact that she's also dealing with a romance as well, and all these things, and the fact that her parents are very busy and their lives are quite stressful, and all this, it all feeds into the fact that she's getting a writer's block, and she comes across an old shop that has in it the Baron, and the Baron is a cat with a top hat on, and he's an inanimate object, but he comes to life in her story. It's set in Tokyo, and you are instantly transported to Tokyo. The hilltop houses that a lot of this film takes place in are beautifully animated and brought to life. Not only through the animation, but through the music as well. Country Roads, Take Me Home, Country Roads is literally used all as like a common refrain that's just used throughout the whole film. It kind of it's kind of, allowing you as the viewer to go on this, basically she's taking you on this journey, and the music constantly comes into the film, as like provides a foundation for the rest of the film's music, but also the rest of the film's story. It's really, it's one of the most realistic Ghibli films, to be honest. It's one of the most real. It really feels like this could actually happen. This story could have actually happened. Not the fantasy story that she's writing about, but everything around it could actually really happen. And it really feels, I say, because it's so grounded, it's taking place in Tokyo, it really takes you to Tokyo. You really feel like you're there when you're watching it. The two young, the girl and the boy, the romance is really well done and well handled. It's a lovely film. It's an absolutely lovely film. Highly recommend it. And that is the work of Studio Ghibli and how I've ranked it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've never watched a Studio Ghibli film and you have Netflix, they're all on Netflix. I sincerely hope that you give them a try. Seriously, they are great. They are really lovely pieces of work. And you'll have a great time. You'll have a lot of enjoyment. You'll get a lot of enjoyment out of them, I'm sure. There's something for everyone. So until next time, everyone, take care, and I'll see you all soon.